Everybody. Can you hear okay? No. Can we turn it up? How's that? Oh, that's much better, isn't it? Okay. So now that you can hear me, we're going to sit in silence for a few minutes. Okay? Because I always like to do that so we can make the switch, and use our energy in a different way. So first get untangled from your microphones, and then put your hands in your lap, right and left, thumbs touching, your feet flat on the floor. And take a moment to check in with your body and see if there's tension anywhere. And if there is, then release it. Okay. So the title, as far as I understood it, is just the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, which is the name of the series that I have the honor of co-authoring with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the idea behind this series is that there's kind of two types of Buddhist books that are published nowadays. One are usually short books, which are reworked transcriptions from oral teachings. So you have kind of the whole path in one volume. And then another genre of books, which are translations from Tibetan and Sanskrit, or even Pali, which are written in very complex philosophical language. And there's very little in between. Yeah, so you read the beginner books and get an idea, and then you want to read more, and the philosophical ones are often beyond your beyond. So the idea of this series is to fill that gap and put something in the middle so that people can go deeper in the topics and learn them more, but without having to go in the great deal that the philosophical treatises go in, and also written in easier language. Okay, so my job is basically to translate from English into English. Yeah, if you get what I mean. And also to rework some of the material, because when Buddhism was taught in Tibet, it was taught basically to people who were already Buddhists. Okay, and so there are people who believe in rebirth, who know a little bit about what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the three jewels, are. But then, Buddhist teachers come here and they talk about rebirth, and we go, what are you talking about? And they talk about the three jewels, and we go, how do I know the Buddha exists? And then they read something from some of the Tibetan scriptures, and the Tibetan authors sometimes put these little stories in the scriptures that the Tibetans think are hilarious, and we can't figure out what in the world they mean. So the idea was to, write something that was more for a contemporary audience, for people who, didn't grow up in a Buddhist culture or with Buddhism at home. So I started writing, and His Holiness gave me some transcripts and things like that, and I started writing, and I've been listening to him teach for years. So putting that in. And then after a few years, he said to me, this needs to be really unique. And so put in material from the other Buddhist traditions, you know, especially from the Pali tradition, or Theravada tradition that's practiced mainly in Southeast Asia and South Asia, and also, of course, from the Chinese tradition in East Asia. And so we're just becoming friends. And so I wound up spending some time in Taiwan and also in Thailand to learn about the other Buddhist traditions. And I found it so helpful and to my own practice. And it really showed me even more what an incredible teacher the Buddha was, because people have really different tendencies and aptitudes and needs, and different things make sense to different people. So the Buddha gave a whole wide range of teachings so that people can find what suits their mentality and their approach. So rather than looking at the different Buddhist teachings and say one is better than the other, it's more they all come from the same teacher, and they have a variety of methods that reach out to a variety of people. And so from that, you know, I kept on putting that in the manuscript, and then His Holiness wanted one book that was really about the different Buddhist traditions, because he really feels very strongly that they should come together and be able to speak in one voice. And so the book Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions was written. But even after that one was written, I still had 2,000 pages of manuscript that I had put together that was not going to go in the garbage, let me tell you. And so then started writing the Library of Wisdom and Compassion. Okay, so these are the first two volumes. Approaching the Buddhist Path is volume 1, and the Foundation of Buddhist Practice is volume 2. Volume 3, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature, comes out in January. And volume 4 is on my computer. And then I have to give the manuscript to them by next month. And that one is called Entering the Buddhist Path. The 3 refuges, the 3 jewels, and the 3 higher trainings. And then from there, volume 5 will be about bodhicitta and the perfections. And then there will be a couple of volumes about emptiness, the nature of reality, and a volume about Tantra. And so I'm not sure how many volumes there will be altogether. I think at least 8. Yeah. So, and let me tell you, I did not think I would ever be doing something like this. When I remember my first year of college English class, you know, the required English class, remember that one? And my papers came back totally marked up with red ink. Yeah, totally marked up. But I think I have to thank Mrs. Mikowski in 7th grade and Mrs. Sloan in my sophomore year of high school for, and then that TA who taught the college course, whose name I can't remember because I disliked the course so much. But I have to thank all of them, because without all of them teaching me, there would be no way to, you know, do this. So, oh, my glasses. Sundru, there's a pink glass case somewhere, probably in the bottom of the bag. Yeah, because I thought to read a little bit to you from each book, and then, you know, talk a little bit about it. His Holiness's style in teaching, if you've ever heard him teach, thank you very much. I'll just leave it here. If you've ever heard him teach, is he, especially with Westerners, because he knows people have had an education, he just dives in, you know? And he just starts, you know, you're brand new, you don't know anything. He starts with the 2 truths. You go, huh? Then he does 4 truths, and you go, double, huh? And then he starts talking about the nature of reality and what is the mind and all this complicated stuff. But I think it's because, one, he knows that we've had an education, and second, he really wants to get across the basic premises of Buddhism so that you can get, just even if you don't understand it very well, some kind of inkling of what an incredible rich tradition this is. Okay? And then when he teaches, so, you know, he'll start out with something complex, then he'll do something about love and compassion that we can all understand, even though we can't practice it. And then he'll tell a story, and then he'll go back into philosophy, and he'll come out again and, you know, talk about forgiveness. And so in one talk, he will cover many different things as he just flows in and out of all of them. So, yeah, I've tried to capture some of that flavor here. Volume 1 is pretty much an introductory book because, well, I call it introductory, but it starts out with the nature of the mind. Yeah, not simple topics. Because Westerners and people who haven't grown up, with Buddhism, need a lot of information and a lot of contemplation before even getting into the regular path. So all of this volume is that, and half of this volume, and then we kind of start in with some of the usual sequence. So I thought to read a little bit to you and comment as I read. The problem is to select what to read. Okay, we have what is mind, body, mind, rebirth, and self. Okay, then we have a whole chapter about emotions. Yeah, and working with fear and developing courage. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. Okay, why don't we start there? Or we could start, okay, let's just start there. We'll jump in. It's in the middle of a chapter. Nothing like starting in the middle of the book, and also each, not every section of the book, but every chapter of the book has reflections in it, so that you read something and then there's some summary points to reflect on, or some questions to contemplate, so that you can really think about the material. Okay. So here's the section, Working with Fear, Developing Courage. So His Holiness says, above, we've briefly considered the 2 types of fear, one based on wisdom and the other that succumbs to panic. Okay, so in Buddhism, there's some emotions that can have 2 aspects, or 2 kinds, So if we look at fear, mostly what we think of as fear is the panicky, freaked out, I'm terrified, I can't handle this, get me out of here fear. Okay? So that's one kind of fear. That kind of fear is clearly an obstacle on the path, and we have to do something about it. There's another kind of fear that is more an awareness of danger. When you merge onto I-5, You're not freaked out and panicky, but you're aware that there's danger. So that kind of fear that is a wisdom fear, that's aware of danger and therefore takes steps to not fall into that danger. Okay, so that second kind of fear is actually something very helpful to us. You know, if you had none of that and you just, you know, were merging onto I-5 with your foot pressed all the way down on the gas, then your passengers would have the panicky, freaked out kind of fear. Okay. Okay, so the first type of fear stems, so this is what I just described as the second one, but the first type of fear stems from reason and is healthy. When we light a fire, we are aware of the danger and take care to avoid it. That fear protects us. Similarly, when we correctly analyze the causes of cyclic existence, we have a wise fear of them, and that makes us conscientious about our moods and our actions. This wisdom-based fear is important in daily life and on the path. Okay? Because it wakes us up, and we're conscientious, and then we avoid whatever the danger is. Panicked fear is problematic because it prevents us from seeing the situation clearly. For example, when I was a child, this is His Holiness talking, and I passed through some dark rooms in the Potala, I feared someone was hiding there. If just a small mouse ran by, I jumped with fright. This kind of fear is due to our imagination. It is mentally created. Getting accurate information and changing our view of the situation can counteract it. For example, when we insecure, insecure, fearful, and lonely, we can meditate on the kindness we have received from others so that a sense of connection and gratitude arises in our hearts, and we know we have support. If we are skeptical and suspicious of someone, it is helpful to consider him as another human being just like us. In that way, our attitude will be more receptive and we will be able to assess the situation with greater clarity and wisdom. Okay, so this can lead us in, you know, because fear and anxiety and worry, they're all kind of different flavors of ice cream that are related, aren't they? Yeah? So when we look, you know, when we're really anxious, when we're worried about something, it's our imagination going. Yeah. Because whatever it is we're anxious about has not happened. And we're projecting in the future, and we are screenwriting a horror story, yeah, with ourselves as the main character. And then getting afraid of the story that we are creating. Have you ever done this in your life? Okay. So when we see that we're doing this and getting this kind of panicked fear, then the thing is to stop, take a step back, press the pause button of our sci-fi screenplay and just say, wow, my mind is making up something, yeah, based on very little information, and then getting scared because I'm sure it's going to happen. And how likely is that actually to happen? Probably not very. And even if it did happen, don't we have resources either within ourselves or in our community with our friends you know? If something dangerous happens, it's not like we're bereft of help. There's many kind beings around us, and we have our own internal resources we can draw on inside of ourselves. And so in that way, by training our mind to think in more reasonable ways, then a lot of these emotions that are based on exaggeration and projection and imagination, they fade into the background because we aren't feeding them. Okay? But we have to learn to detect when they're arising and press the mental pause button, or stop button is even better. Okay? And then applying the antidote means really thinking about it and asking ourselves, you know, is this story that I'm making up, that I'm getting anxious and fearful about, how much does it have to do with reality? And if we look clearly, not much. Not much. Another unrealistic fear may occur when we are threatened with losing our job. Okay? Our minds imagine that we will immediately be homeless, sitting on the street with our hungry children. Applying our intelligence, we should investigate whether we are viewing the situation accurately or exaggerating certain aspects. We may find that the situation is unlikely to occur as we imagined it, and even if it did, we have the skills to manage it. There are resources in society and in our network of friends and relatives to help us. So we need not paint a dire picture of circumstances that don't exist at this very moment. Because you look, and I mean, that's what anxiety, worry, and fear are all about. It's things that are not happening right now. And we make ourselves totally miserable over what is not happening. It's amazing, isn't it? We think we're smart. Look what we're doing. Yeah? Some people look at the political, economic, social, and environmental situation of the world and develop a wisdom fear that inspires them to work to prevent harm to the planet and its living beings. Looking at the same situation, other people develop a despondent fear. Such a discouraged mental state immobilizes them, and their wish to help gets lost amidst waves of despair. To counter this, we must constantly maintain our compassion and keep our hearts open so that no matter what others' responses are, we remain earnest. Okay. Now, since the 2016 election at the Abbey, we have received so many emails and requests for spiritual advice from people who say, I'm freaking out, you know? And it's just when you think that nothing more bizarre can happen in our national discourse, something more bizarre happens. Yeah, it's kind of unreal, isn't it? Yeah? Sometimes I feel like I'm living in like a loony place. Yeah? It's too weird. So it's very easy, you know, to kind of look at that and just feel, you know, the whole world is screwed up, forget it. You know? It's like, I'm going to try not to talk about politics. Can I talk about politics? Get your tomatoes ready. But, you know, And so it could be really tempting to just say, this is just too screwed up. Forget it. Just forget it. But that doesn't do any good, because we just fall into despair, despondency, and we're feeling lousy, and we're not doing anything to change the situation either. Okay? Shantideva, the 8th century Buddhist sage, who is totally wonderful, he has one verse in his book. It says something to the effect of, if you can change a situation, there's no reason to get angry, because you can work to change it. If you can't change it, then there's nothing to do, so there's no reason to get angry. When we look at what's happening in the country, there is something we can do, isn't there? I mean, you would like to go in and maybe remove all the residents from the White House and from the Capitol. We can't do that, okay? But November 6th, we can vote. And even before that and after that, we can write letters. We can sign petitions. We can make donations. Yeah, we can march. We can speak out. There's a lot we can do. Okay? And we can do all these things without being angry. Yeah. In fact, we are so much more effective when we aren't angry. Because when we are angry, we're not thinking clearly. Yeah. Unless any of you, do you think clearly when you're angry? I don't. It's like, if I'm angry, who knows what in the world I'll say, And if I'm really angry, when people are really angry, they do really stupid things. Yeah? Do you do stupid things when you're angry? Do you say the most horrible things to the people you love the most when you're angry? Yeah? Do you say things to your loved ones you'd never say to strangers when you're angry? Okay? So really, anger is not our friend. Yeah? But in these situations, we don't need to be angry to have the energy to do something. Yeah? What we need is compassion. Yeah? Compassion for the people who are causing the harm, compassion for the people who are experiencing the result of the harm, compassion for ourselves, and then motivated by compassion, then we can act. And the thing is, when we have compassion, we act a whole lot more clearly. Yeah? Because we're not partial. We can see the different sides of things. We take the time to actually slow down and communicate with somebody instead of just lashing out and blaming everything. Because situations are complex. We can't just blame certain people in the country. Although, after Kavanaugh, it is very tempting. Yeah? But we can't do that because things are complex. Yeah? And so we have to continue to see people as individuals and not just take some characteristic of people, or especially characteristics we project onto them, throw them in a bag, give them a label, and then throw them out because we think we know everything about them. Yeah? So I always marvel. His Holiness hasn't come to the U.S. in the last few years. He's quite old now. The travel is difficult. But one of the last times he came, he spoke for about 15 minutes to the Senate. And I thought, he may have actually spoken to the House too, I can't remember. But I thought, wow, Ted Cruz heard the Dalai Lama. Yeah? Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Graham and Grassley heard the Dalai Lama. Yeah, unbelievable, but it happened. Yeah, and so you think about that, and you see seeds were planted in people's minds, and those seeds one day can ripen. Yeah. What I do a lot in my spiritual practice, often, to keep remembering that situations change and people can change because everything is produced by causes and conditions. So often at the Abbey, we do bowing practices where we're prostrating to the Buddha. So I imagine the Buddha in front, surrounded by all the other holy beings. Okay? On this side, I have the Senate. On this side, I have the Congress. And the President is right in front of me. And we're all looking at the Buddha, and we're all bowing to the Buddha together. So while we're chanting, I imagine that they're all chanting and bowing with me. And that changes my mind, and I hope it maybe sends some good energy to them. Yeah. So, this kind of monitoring our mind and transforming our mind is so important in the world that we're living in now. So that we don't just see it as us and them, us and them. We're the smart people, they're all stupid. Because it's not like that. Because you meet those same people in a different situation, and they may save your life. Or you may save their life. Okay, so we can't just categorize people like that. Okay. Courage comes from the way we regard situations. For example, from one viewpoint, the current situation in Tibet is dire. From another, there is hope. Focusing on the positive by being aware of, but not discouraged by the negative, enables us to make every effort to improve conditions. And this is the way His Holiness has remained as a happy person, although he's been a refugee since 1959, and there's been genocide and environmental destruction and everything else in Tibet. One single practice or method alone cannot develop courage. It requires contemplation of several topics over a period of time. These topics include the preciousness of our human life, the potentials of ourself and all others to become fully awakened Buddhas, the compassionate awakening activities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the life stories of great masters, the kindness we have received from all sentient beings, and love, compassion, and taking others' suffering and giving them our happiness. These meditations will uplift and balance the mind so that we then view situations from a broad perspective. Yeah, so he's always mentioning a broad perspective, because we can see that when there's clinging and attachment, our mind gets very narrow. When there's anger and resentment, the mind gets very narrow. So he's always emphasizing, big picture. In addition to courage, we need confidence. To develop this, I keep in mind some basic beliefs. Okay, so first, human nature is gentle and compassionate. So he approaches people, from that basis. Human nature is gentle and compassionate. And, how we approach people colors what our experience is. If If our idea is people are corrupt and untrustworthy, then everybody we look at, we're looking for corruption and lack of trustworthiness. If we think human nature is kind and gentle, when we meet people, that's what we see. Yeah. Someone once told me a little slogan, pickpockets see pockets. And it's true. If you have in mind a certain thing, that's what you see. Okay? So this is something that colors our experience of the world so much, but we're usually not even aware of it. Yeah? Of what are my assumptions? Yeah, we're not even aware of our assumptions, but they color what we pick out and what we perceive and how we interpret things. Yeah? So it's very helpful, as much as we can, to be aware of our assumptions about people and our basic MO, how we operate. Yeah. Because, if we approach people with suspicion, then we see dishonesty in them. If we approach people with a belief that at heart they're kind, even though sometimes they may get upset, then we see that kindness. Yeah? And I think sometimes that being with people is like playing a musical instrument. The musical instrument by itself doesn't produce beautiful sounds or horrible sounds. It depends on the person that's playing it. So you can, if you know what you're doing, you can make the flute sound beautiful. If you don't know what you're doing, then it sounds awful. Okay? So it's kind of the same with people. There was one nun, because when we ordain, we sit in ordination order, yeah? So there was one nun that very often was seated behind me. And she was a real practice of patience sometimes. She was uncomfortable. Could you move your cushion? Could you do this? Could you do that? I'm not comfortable. This, that, the other thing. Always complaining. Okay? So you can see something about my view of what I saw in her. Okay? And then one day, we were talking, and she started telling me a little bit about her life. And she was born, I think, in Germany, and she was telling me during the war how her family escaped. She was just a child or a toddler, and she was telling me this story. And as we started talking, I was really interested in her story. So the way I spoke was different, and then of course the way she spoke was different, and we had a really good time together. And then one day it was her birthday, and she invited a lot of us over. And, she was serving all these goodies, and she took so much delight in serving people delicious food. She was just so happy to do it. Yeah? And so I began to see that, how I approached her and what I talked to her about it completely, or put it this way, how I felt about her and my experience of being with her depended completely on how I approached her. If I asked her how she was, I would be hearing about her aches and pains for 3 hours. If I asked her another question, And, you know, because she also loved to arrange flowers to put on the altar for our teachers. If I asked her about that, she would be happy and delighted, and we'd have a great conversation. Yeah? So I began to think that, you know, being with people, it's like playing a musical instrument. You have to know how to play it to bring out the beautiful melodies. You know? So we have to know how to approach people to bring out their goodness. Because also we have the power to bring out their badness too. Yeah? If we approach somebody with accusations that are unfounded, you know, or even accusations that are true, but we don't express it very well, yeah, then we're going to have a whole different kind of interaction with them. Okay. Okay, so his basic beliefs. Human nature is gentle and compassionate. Each and every one of us does not want suffering, and we have a right to try to overcome it. Yeah? And that's true for everybody. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how much we dislike somebody. It may be somebody we know personally that we feel threatened by. They still want happiness and they don't want to suffer. It may be a politician or somebody on Wall Street or, you know, whoever. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. Yeah. It could be Putin. It could be people in the Syrian army. Doesn't matter. They still want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Okay? So all beings have the potential to become wise, altruistic Buddhas. Everybody has that potential. Nobody misses it. Okay? Including us. And I say that because sometimes we think, oh, everybody else is so good and they're so successful, and I'm just a failure. And that's nonsense. Okay? Everybody has the Buddha nature. Reflecting on these gives me inner strength and determination, a compassionate motivation, and a clear beneficial goal give me self-confidence and destroy doubts. In other words, confidence arises not from being successful in our projects, but from engaging in them with a wise and kind motivation. Isn't that a different approach? Because we are always so goal-oriented. You know, I have a goal. If I can accomplish my goal, I'm successful. And His Holiness is saying, no, that's not success. Yeah? He's saying engaging in our actions with a wise and kind motivation, that is the measure of success. Yeah? Because so often we engage in actions with sometimes really rotten motivations, don't we? I mean, we're with friends, we can admit it. You know, sometimes we're greedy, aren't we? Sometimes we're jealous. Sometimes we're arrogant. Sometimes we're full of rancor. Yeah? So when we can do something motivated with a wise and kind motivation, that's success, isn't it? We're bringing out and cultivating our good intentions, the better side of ourselves, you know, and that's what causes happiness. Yeah, what causes happiness in the world is not getting our external goals. We think that causes happiness, but it doesn't. Yeah. It isn't about getting trophies. It isn't about getting diplomas. I know I sound like a heretic. You know, because what does our society tell us? You know, you need paper, you need trophies, you need, you know, something to show. Yeah. You need a house, you need a bank account, you need titles after your name, whatever. Okay. And if you really think about it, how much happiness does that bring you? Yeah? Whereas, how much happiness does it bring you when you can act with kindness towards somebody? What brings you more happiness? Yeah? We just have to look at our experience. What brings us more happiness? Oh, I succeeded in getting that promotion. Now I get to work overtime. Yippee! That's happiness? Or, you know, gee, I saw that there was the promotion, but actually I'm content with my life the way it is now, and I have more time with my family. I have more time with my spiritual practice. I don't need the promotion. Yeah, my colleague wants it, let them have it. Yeah? Doesn't that bring more happiness? Okay? So we have to really think about these things. Yeah? Not just take what society tells us as true. Yeah, but really question it. Where was I here? Okay. Human beings have remarkable intelligence, which, if applied correctly, can solve problems and conflicts. Fatalistic attitudes are useless. We have the capacity to prevent hardships and improve what is good. We must do our best to use our abilities in constructive ways. If we make every effort and still fail, we need not have regrets. We can accept what happens. However, if due to lack of care or hope, negative things happen, that is extremely sad. If we do our best and things still don't turn out the way we want, that's okay. But if we don't try and we just give up, and then things that aren't so nice happen, then we have to think about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a little bit from approaching the Buddhist path. Let's see what this one has. There's a lot more in the book, by the way. Okay. There's some really good chapters in here about spiritual mentors and the qualities of qualified spiritual mentors, how to relate to spiritual mentors, what to do if problems arise. And I think, you know, because of things that have happened recently in the Buddhist community, these chapters can be very helpful to people. Okay. Here's some more about mind, body, and rebirth. Okay. Oh, then we have taking the essence of our precious human life, the eight worldly concerns, fear or hope at death, the death process, helping ourselves and others at the time of death, and then several chapters about karma. What do you want to hear?
Karma.
You want to hear about karma?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, now there's 1, 2, 3, 3 long chapters about karma.
Which are they?
Huh?
Which Which are they?
Chapter 10, 11, and 12.
As in, like, what are the topics for each?
Oh, the topics. Well, one is just the law of karma and its effects, general and specific characteristics of karma, the weight of karma when it ripens.
Do the weight of karma.
The weight of karma. I think maybe we should do the law of karma and its effects first for people who don't know anything about karma. And then we can go to the weight of karma. Okay, so 232. Okay. Okay, so it is helpful to review the three characteristics of all systems of causality. Okay, and Buddhism is really based on causality, thinking about, you know, what causes what, and what is caused by what. Yeah, and if we can understand causality, that gives us a lot of power, because then we can create the causes for the kind of future we want and abandon the causes for the kind of future we don't want. Okay, so three characteristics of causality. One, effects arise from causes and cannot arise without causes. Okay, so there's no such thing as causeless production. Things do not happen without a cause. Yeah, phenomena that change are produced by causes. They don't just appear. Yeah, everything happens due to causes. Okay, a tree grows from a seed and cannot grow without a seed. Yeah, that's clear. By the way, I discovered what magic is. Okay? Magic is when you don't know what caused something. Yeah? In other words, there was a cause that produced that result, but you don't know what the cause was. So we call that situation magic. Right? Okay, so causes arise from, effects arise from causes and cannot arise without causes. That's the first premise. Second one, causes are impermanent because the arising of an effect necessitates the cessation of the cause. The seed ceases and changes into a sprout and then a tree. Okay, so causes are impermanent, and the cause must cease for the effect to arise. And effects have to arise from impermanent causes. Yeah, if causes were permanent, they couldn't produce anything, because production or arising necessitates change. So whatever the cause was, it goes out of existence when the result comes into existence. And to think about this in terms of our life is quite interesting. You know, our childhood or yesterday ceases for today to arise. Okay? When we meet a person, the initial way the relationship was ceases for the next way the relationship is to arise. Okay? So the idea is everything is changing in every nanosecond, and we can't really grasp on and hold anything as fixed. Okay? Now, on one hand, that can be quite discouraging, because it means that all the nice things we have are going to go bye-bye, because things change and things disintegrate. On the other hand, the fact that things change means that we can also become Buddhas. That the afflictions that obscure our own mind can change. yeah, that our good qualities can be nourished and they can grow. Okay. Then the third principle is effects must be concordant with their causes. Only a specific cause can produce a specific result. Pine trees grow from pine seeds and not from daisy seeds. Furthermore, one cause alone cannot produce an effect. Cooperative conditions are needed. The seed grows into a tree only when there is sufficient water, fertilizer, and heat. Okay, so in this third one, a result is produced only by concordant causes. Concordant causes mean a cause that has the capacity to produce that result. Okay, so daisies can only be produced by daisy seeds. Yeah, chili pepper seeds do not have the capacity to produce daisies. Okay, so things, we have to see causality and what things match with what results. And that can give us a lot of wisdom. In addition, yeah, anything that arises may have a principal cause, but then there are other circumstances that are cooperative conditions, and they have to be present for that cause to ripen. So in the case of a seed, you need the water, fertilizer, and heat. Yeah, because a seed won't just grow anytime, anywhere. Okay? All right. We can see the specific causes of many external things. However, if we search for the causes of those causes and the causes of those causes, going back to the origin of this universe, we will not be able to pinpoint precisely each and every cause and condition. Although the details of all the causes of the Big Bang are too vast and complex for us to understand, we would not feel right saying that the universe arose without causes. We know that its development follows particular laws of nature, certain systematic ways of growth and decay, even though we may not be able to discern each unique cause and condition. Similarly, on the internal level, sentient beings' experiences of happiness and suffering arise from the preceding causes and conditions. We usually think our happiness and suffering arises from the external world. Okay? So if I'm near a particular person, I'm going to feel happy. If I'm near another person, I'm going to feel miserable. If I have chocolate and I eat chocolate, there's happiness inside that chocolate that goes into me. Okay, so we usually think, you know, happiness and suffering come from outside. Why am I so miserable? Well, my husband does this, my wife does this, my parents, my children, my pet pig, you know, the government, you know, whoever it is. We're always blaming somebody else for our own misery. But actually, if we can see causes and conditions accurately, we discover that the principal causes and conditions of our experience are our own actions, and our actions originate with our own mind from our own motivations and intentions. Okay. Secular society usually traces the causes of happiness and suffering to genetic or environmental factors and does not consider the law of karma and its effects. Bringing in the ethical dimension of our mental intentions gives us a fuller picture of both sentient beings' experiences and the environment they inhabit. As a natural process that functions whether or not a person believes in it, the law of karma and its effects was not created by the Buddha. So the Buddha did not create anything. The Buddha only described the basis, path, and result. You know, he attained that himself, but he did not create the world. He did not create us. Okay? Nor does the Buddha judge people according to their actions and punish or reward them. When someone suffers from illness in which his unwholesome karma plays a causal role along with other factors, it does not mean that that person deserves to suffer or that he made himself sick. Okay? Nor should we ignore those who are injured or oppressed by unjust social structures, thinking that helping them would interfere with their karma. This is a poor excuse for our lack of compassion. Needless to say, those holding such attitudes create destructive karma themselves. Okay, this is very important. Yeah, because many people misunderstand cause and effect. Yeah, and if somebody's suffering, they say, you deserve to suffer because you created the action. You know, that's not a very compassionate thing to say to somebody, is it? You deserve to suffer. Yeah, no, people make mistakes. They haven't purified and made amends. The result comes. But nobody deserves to suffer. And also, we shouldn't think that karma is cast in concrete, such that once you do a particular action, it is going to result in one particular effect and nothing else. It's not like that, yeah. There's a lot of flexibility. True virtue produces happiness, non-virtue produces suffering. But there's a lot of other circumstances that can influence whether a particular karmic seed arises or not. Okay, so there's a lot of control over that if we are attentive and mindful. Okay, and you know, to look at people who are suffering, especially those who are oppressed, and say, well, that's your karma, is like horribly unkind. And somebody who thinks like that and doesn't reach out and help when they can is creating destructive karma themselves. Okay? So, you know, somebody gets hit by a car, they're bleeding in the middle of the street, and you walk by and say, well, you know, if I took you to the hospital, I'm interfering with your karma. So you just have to sit there and bleed, and that way your karma finishes. What? Yeah, that is not a proper understanding of karma. Okay? And similarly, we don't look at people who are oppressed and say, well, you created the karma, tough luck. That's not right. You know, when there's oppression and injustice, we speak out, we do something to correct it. It is important to avoid superimposing concepts from theistic religions onto the Buddha Dharma. The Buddha is not a creator. Karma and its effects are not a system of reward and punishment. It is simply a natural law. Happiness comes as a result of virtue. Suffering is the result of non-virtue. Nowadays, we may hear the word karma used in a flippant way. For example, when asked, why did my business fail when it seemed to have everything required for success? Someone may dismiss it by replying, it's karma. Meaning either, I don't know, or it's fated. And that's not correct. Things are not fated. Okay? So these are inappropriate usages of the word karma, His Holiness says. The principal meaning of karma is volitional action, a physical, verbal, or mental action done with intention. The Buddha says, "It is intention, monastics, that I call karma. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, or mind." So our intention is the karma. The karma leaves an energy trace, for lack of a better word, on our mind stream. We call it a karmic seed, or sometimes we call it a having ceased. We won't get into that. But that has the potential to bring the result. All karmic paths originate with the mind. And here's a quote from the Dhammapada. This is a very famous citation. In fact, it's the opening 2 verses of the Dhammapada. Mind is the forerunner of all miserable states. It is mind that leads the way. Just as the wheel of the ox cart follows the hoof of the ox, so suffering will surely follow when we speak or act impulsively from an impure state of mind. Mind is the forerunner of all happy states. It is mind that leads the way. Just as our shadow never leaves us, so well-being will surely follow when we speak or act from a pure state of mind. And then it goes on, and I think we'll leave it there right now because I want to leave a little time for Q&A and for signing books. So, Train, you have a question?
I generally would say to people that you saved my life, and it's hard to explain because it doesn't mean that I was going to commit suicide. But we'll say that you've shown me the middle way, and so I'm not in a mental state of extremes. So I'm just going about my day, and I have the radio on, and the news comes, and it's it's a quote from that person in the White House. And involuntarily, what my reaction is I say, that man is evil. And I don't usually use that word in my life, but that's my physical, emotional reaction.
You know, a person is never evil. Actions are harmful, but the people who do them are not evil. The people who do them are confused, are suffering, are in pain, and they think doing those harmful actions will make them happy. Yeah. So the problem is not the person. The problem is the action and the intention in the mind that motivated that action. Yeah. So if you think like that, then you don't make anybody into an enemy. Anybody else? Yeah.
Would you be so kind as to speak to physical illness and terminal disease and the Buddhist philosophy around that?
Okay. So about karma or about kindness, did you say? In regards to illness?
I don't know, around the...
Or just talk about illness in general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Buddhist philosophy
Okay.
around the state of mind.
Yeah. Well, we would say, illness, once we have a body like this, yeah, we're going to get ill because of the nature of the body. There's no way not to get ill. Well, there is. You die first. Okay? But the nature of our body in cyclic existence is that it gets old and sick and dies. And this is a universal experience that everybody goes through. Yeah, we don't like it. But that's why we try and get out of cyclic existence, because we don't like it. But it's a natural thing that happens. Now, having said that, you know, our diseases can be related to karma in that, you know, we harmed somebody or we did some kind of harmful action, and then it ripens in our falling ill. Mm-hmm. Then, how to deal with it from illness, from a Buddhist perspective? I'll tell you a story of one woman who came to one retreat I led. She was in her 30s at that time, I think, early 30s. She wasn't feeling well. She went to the doctor, and who ran some tests, and then gave her a diagnosis. I don't know what it was, but it was terminal. It was something that was terminal. And she said that, of course, she was really upset by it. And she had, you know, but she was undergoing some treatment in the hospital. And she made, in the middle of her being upset by this, she thought, oh, how would the Dalai Lama think if he were in this situation? And she told me that it just popped into her mind like this: just be kind. So she said to herself, okay, when I'm going through this treatment, this is going to be my spiritual practice. Just be kind. To the doctors, to the nurses, to the technicians, to the microphone, to my family, to anybody, any living being I encounter. My job is just to be kind. And she said that that's what she practiced in that situation, you know, so that instead of keeping the intention on, I'm sick, I'm terminal, this isn't fair, I'm so young, why did I get this disease, what's going to happen, why haven't scientists developed a cure for this, you know, I don't like this, I want it to stop, but I have no power and control. Instead of letting her mind get into that, she just kept it focused on other people and practicing just being kind. And she said, you know, her mind was okay during this whole process. Then she was feeling better. They ran some more tests, and it came back that what had been ailing her was misdiagnosed, and that she did not have a terminal illness. Yeah. So I sometimes wonder if, you know, that maybe she was terminal, but because of the power of her kindness, something switched, the karma ripened differently. But anyway, that's the story she told me. And it stayed in my mind, and I try and practice that when I'm sick.
Did she change her practice when she discovered she wasn't going to die?
Yes, she continued to practice.
Yeah, so in her example, for example, of just being kind, right? I'm sure she also felt a lot of fear and sadness and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, but what I'm thinking is like, as humans, we have all emotions, like everything, anger too, and if it's not allowed there, maybe we repress it, and that's not good either. So it's kind of like the compassion of embracing everything, like being with everything that is. I'm just thinking when you were speaking about compassion, sometimes we can feel like, okay, we have to always be kind and loving and good and always show our good side and always be, and the mind, you want the mind to always be like that. But as humans, we are everything, and it seems like we need that wholeness, that embracing of everything, the suffering we go through, and like kind of embracing that with compassion.
Okay, so tell me if I've heard correctly. So you're saying that we human beings have all sorts of emotions. Some are very contradictory to each other, and we don't want to suppress any of them because they're all part of us. And so you're saying even when we're suffering, to accept the suffering and embrace the suffering, and because that's part of the human experience.
Yeah, like almost like you have to feel it, like you have to feel the anger. You don't have to act out, but you have to kind of be with it or embrace it somehow. Okay,
so to feel the anger, be with it, embrace it. Now, there's different ways of doing things, okay? And I think, negative emotions, of course, they arise in our mind. We're human beings. We're beings with afflictions. They arise. We can accept that they're there. We're not going to go away, you're not supposed to be here, and push it down. We accept that there's anger or, jealousy or whatever it is. But then the question is, I accept it. Do I want to continue to have it? Now, I don't know about you, I don't want to continue to have those emotions. That doesn't mean I'm going to suppress them, because that doesn't do any good. Yeah, suppressing them, pretending to be, goody two-shoes, and trying to pretend to be happy when you aren't. That doesn't work. However, in the Buddha Dharma, the Buddha taught many ways to look at situations in a different way, so that how you're experiencing something changes. You're not suppressing it, you're not acting it out, but you're looking at the situation in a different way, and because you have a different perspective, your experience is different. Okay? So it's in this way, when we have some kind of disturbing emotion, we have a whole genre of teachings called the thought training teachings, in which we learn to see things from different perspectives. And when you do that, your whole feeling of the emotion can change. Yeah? Sometimes I think we make our emotions really concrete. I know some of us feel emotions very deeply. I'm one of those people, Before, I could talk about my emotions all day and all night, and I analyzed them, and I felt them. And my parents used to call me Sarah Bernhardt, because I felt everything so deeply. And, always everything was drama. But what I learned is when I started to practice Buddhism, yes, I accept those things, but I don't want to make them my identity. And I don't want to let my mind dwell in them, because it doesn't help anything when I let my mind dwell in some kind of disturbing or negative emotion. So what I found so precious in the Buddha's teachings is learning how to flip the situation, see it from a different perspective, and then my emotion changes. So one of the things, like in this thing of just be kind, is when we pay attention to other living beings and we really look at their situation and we have compassion for them, our own suffering doesn't hurt as much because we're paying attention to others. Yeah? When we just pay attention to ourselves and our own suffering, our suffering increases and becomes unbearable. And this is the function of the way the self-centered thought works. You know, I stub my toe. I'm taking a stupid example. I stub my toe. Oh, this is terrible. It really hurts. Oh no, maybe I broke my toe bone. Oh, if I broke my toe bone, then, and I don't get it fixed, but I don't have so much money to go to the doctor, and if I don't get it fixed, then I might get crippled, and then I might not be able to walk, and this can be terrible. I mean, what happens if I'm no longer able to walk because my foot got crippled because I stubbed my toe, and it hurts so much, and I'm so worried about what could possibly happen because of this, and how will I get the money to deal with it? And we work ourselves up into a frenzy. Yeah? When we look at it from a different perspective, you know, when we pay attention to others, it's like our toe doesn't hurt anymore. Any parent knows this. What do you do when your kid's crying? You bring him into a different place where they're distracted from thinking about themselves, and they pay attention to something else. Yeah, every parent knows this, don't you? Yeah? If you're inside and your kid is shrieking, you take your kid outside in the cool air, and the baby all of a sudden is like, whoa, what's going on? Okay? So it's just amazing when we learn how to do this with our minds, you know, and how our minds create our experience. And the self-centered thought that just goes round and around and around in circle about my emotions and my experiences, that thought makes us totally miserable. Yeah? Compassion takes us out of ourselves. You still have to deal with your toe. You stubbed it. But, you know, it's probably not broken, and you're probably not going to be crippled as a result of it. So chill out, you know? But, you know, you can look at other living beings, and then your focus is on something else. Okay? I'll tell you a story. I went to Dharamsala in August to have some interviews with His Holiness about the series of books. So I was staying at one guest house, and to get to where His Holiness's residence is, there was a long way and there was a shortcut. And the shortcut involved going through a hole in a barbed wire fence. So I had gone this route a few times before, no problem. So I'm carrying my bag with my computer and and I stepped through the hole in the barbed wire fence with one foot, and then I stepped through with the other foot, and my rope gets caught, and before I knew it, I was on that asphalt. My head went clunk on the asphalt. I'm going to see His Holiness Dalai Lama. Yeah, and you can't be late. And I heard this clunk, you know, when my head hit the asphalt, just face on. And I stood up and, okay, it's not gushing blood, that's okay. Later on, we had one of those wipe-its or something, so kind of wiped it out. It swelled. I had a lump here. There were scratches here. My nose was all scratched. My knee was wrecked up. It still is, But, okay, I thought, well, that was some negative karma that ripened and now it's over with. Anyway, I can't be late for my appointment with the Dalai Lama. Let's go on. And, may nobody else ever trip going through that hole in the barbed wire. Yeah. And so I went, got to the appointment, walked in the room. His Holiness looked at me and said, "What had happened to you?" He went up and kind of, because it was all swollen and bruised. I was quite bruised. But that was okay, I mean, it was like, okay, you fall down, you go clunk. At least, I didn't break anything. I didn't crack my head open. That's okay. And from a Buddhist viewpoint, you view it as, that's some kind of negative karma that's over and done with. Finished. May nobody ever suffer that kind of thing. And life goes on. And I could have, years ago, I would have gone, oh no, I hit my head, I need an ice bag. But in India, they don't have ice bags. Where am I going to get an ice bag? Oh no, it's going to swell up. Did I crack my head open? Oh, it's all bruised. It's bloody. Oh, maybe I got to get my knee x-rayed. Maybe my knee's going to be permanently out. What's the story? I mean, I would have gone into some big thing and made myself and everybody around me miserable. But thanks to the Dharma, it was just like, okay, that happened. What's next? Okay? So a lot depends on how we look at things, on our mind. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hear what you're saying.
But
I think it's easy to say that for, and by the way, you're really lucky you didn't get a subdural hematoma. And I'm glad you did. But I think it's all well and good to say that for things that are more temporary potentially, or but I guess I'm wondering, if somebody has chronic pain, if they have something like a terminal illness, something that's not going to go away, that they have to reconcile and get through. I guess I just wonder, I think kindness towards other people is really important. I agree. I think that it takes you away from yourself, and that always is very helpful. And, but you still can't escape that, and especially if you have something like really significant pain.
yeah, I mean, you have to deal with the present situation.
Right.
You have to deal with it, but there's different ways to deal with it.
Can you speak to that maybe a little bit?
Okay, so there's different ways to deal with it. So you can deal with it. The karma's ripening, it's finished, that's good. You can deal with it. There's a meditation where we imagine taking on others' suffering and giving them happiness. That's a very effective method for dealing with that. Okay? There's lots of different kinds of meditations that you can do to help change your mind. Because there's one thing, there's the physical situation, then there's the mind's response to the physical situation. Very often the mind, what the mind does in response to the physical situation is what causes us more suffering than the physical situation itself. Okay? So you know, in our spiritual practice, we're working with the mind to transform the mind. Of course, if you're bleeding, you bandage it. If you're sick, you go to the doctor and you take medicine. You know, you deal with whatever the situation is, but you don't have to let your mind spin out of control. You know, such that, you know, you have this degree of pain from the physical, and then your mind goes to this degree of mental pain because of the way you're responding to the situation. Okay? So we're not suppressing anything. Yeah? And we have to learn to be kind to ourselves in the process. Okay? But what I'm saying is the mind is very powerful. And if we learn how to work with our mind, we can change our experience. Yeah? And there's some situations, you know, there's kind of two choices. Be miserable or change how you're thinking. And it's our choice. It's our choice of what we want to do. Okay, let's just spend a minute and just sit and think of what you learned that you want to take home with you and practice. And then let's rejoice at all the positive potential, the good energy, the merit that we created as individuals and as a group today. And you can think of it as like a very beautiful light in the center of your chest that you radiate out into the world. So may all the goodness that we created this evening, may we send it out and share it with all other living beings. So you can think that light goes out and touches all those people, all those animals and other creatures, and brings peace in their body and minds. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you very much.